There's a madman walking among us. He carries no sword, commands no army, owns nothing, yet he's more dangerous to the powerful than any weapon ever forged. His name was Diogenes, and he discovered something so radical, so earth-shattering about human nature, that it could destroy everything you think you know about success, happiness, and what it means to be alive. You see, while everyone else was chasing gold, power, and status, this lunatic was doing the opposite. He was deliberately destroying his own reputation, intentionally making himself look foolish, purposefully becoming the most hated man in Greece. And here's the terrifying part. It made him the freest, most powerful human being who ever lived. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how he did it. How one homeless philosopher discovered the secret to psychological invincibility. How he turned weakness into strength, poverty into power, and humiliation into liberation. But I have to warn you, once you see what I'm about to show you, you'll never look at your fears, your desires, or your ego the same way again. Are you ready to meet the man who broke reality? Let me tell you about the demon that controls your life. You might not see it, but it's there, watching, waiting, ready to strike the moment you dare to step outside the invisible cage society has built around you. This demon has a name: shame. Shame is what keeps you trapped in jobs you hate. Shame is what stops you from speaking your truth. Shame is what makes you live someone else's life instead of your own. It whispers in your ear, what will they think? What will they say? And here's what nobody tells you. This demon isn't your enemy. It's your master. You're not living your life. You're living the life that shame allows you to live. Diogenes understood something that most people never figure out. The person who controls shame controls everything. But here's where it gets interesting. Everyone tries to avoid shame. Diogenes did something different. Something that sounds completely insane but works with surgical precision. He weaponized it. Picture this: ancient Athens, 350 BCE, the most civilized city in the world. Beautiful marble buildings, philosophical academies, the birthplace of democracy. And right in the middle of the marketplace, the most important, respected place in the city, there's a man living in a clay jar. Not visiting, living. This man has deliberately thrown away wealth, status, everything that normal people kill for. He eats scraps like a dog. He relieves himself wherever he wants. He pleasures himself in public. The respectable citizens are horrified. This isn't just poverty. This is a direct assault on everything they believe in. But here's what they don't understand. Diogenes isn't homeless. He's liberated. Every act of deliberate shamelessness is like lifting weights, but instead of building muscle, he's building something far more valuable. Psychological immunity. Now let me tell you about the day Diogenes broke the most powerful man in the world. Picture the scene. Alexander the Great, conqueror of nations, commander of the largest empire in human history, approaches this homeless philosopher. Alexander has heard the stories. This madman who lives in a jar and fears nothing. Alexander stands before Diogenes, his golden armor gleaming in the sun, surrounded by generals and soldiers. The entire marketplace falls silent. The most powerful man on earth is about to speak to a beggar. "I am Alexander the Great," he announces. "Ask me for anything you desire and I will grant it." The crowd holds its breath. Here's a chance for ultimate fortune. Gold beyond measure, power beyond imagination, a palace, an army, anything. Diogenes looks up from his jar, squints at this impressive figure blocking his sunlight, and says 5 words that change everything. "Stand out of my sun." That's it. No request for gold, no begging for mercy, no flattery for the conqueror, just move, you're in my way. And here's the incredible part. Alexander doesn't get angry. He doesn't order his execution. Instead, he turns to his generals and says, "If I were not Alexander, I would want to be Diogenes." Do you understand what just happened? The most powerful man in the world just admitted that a homeless man was more free than he was. This is what I call the Alexander Principle. True power isn't the ability to control others. It's the inability for others to control you. But how? How did a man with nothing become more powerful than an emperor? The answer will revolutionize how you think about strength. Most people get this backwards. They think power comes from gaining things: money, status, respect, admiration. But Diogenes discovered the opposite. Real power comes from needing nothing. Think about it. What controls you? Your mortgage, your reputation, your boss's opinion, your social media likes. The more you need these things, the more power they have over you. The more power they have over you, the less free you become. Diogenes figured out something that sounds completely insane, but works with mathematical precision. The things you're afraid to lose are the things that make you a slave. So he developed what I call the inversion protocol. Instead of trying to gain what society values, he deliberately rejected it. Instead of trying to avoid what society fears, he deliberately embraced it. Poverty, he chose it. Shame, he weaponized it. Social rejection, he celebrated it. But here's the genius part. By voluntarily giving up everything that people use to control each other, he became uncontrollable. Think about your greatest fear. Maybe it's public humiliation. Maybe it's financial ruin. Maybe it's being rejected, laughed at, cast out. Now imagine you deliberately, voluntarily experience that fear, not by accident, not as punishment, but as training. What would they have left to threaten you with? This is exactly what Diogenes did. And it didn't just make him free, it made him dangerous. Because a man who fears nothing can say anything. A man who needs nothing can challenge everything. A man who owns nothing cannot be bought, cannot be threatened, cannot be controlled. He had achieved something that kings and billionaires spend their entire lives trying to buy: complete autonomy. But the story gets even more twisted. Fast forward 500 years. There's another philosopher, but this one's different. This one has everything Diogenes rejected: absolute power, unlimited wealth, the entire Roman Empire at his command. His name, Marcus Aurelius, and he's secretly living by the same principles as the madman in the jar. But Marcus had to be clever about it. You can't rule an empire while living in a pottery jar. So he developed what I call the internal revolution, a way to practice Diogenes' freedom while maintaining external power. Here's what nobody tells you about Marcus Aurelius. This man, who commanded legions and controlled half the world, spent every morning preparing himself for loss. Every single day he would mentally rehearse losing everything: his power, his wealth, his family, his life. Not because he was pessimistic, but because he was training. He writes in his personal journal, "You came from nothing and will return to nothing. What have you lost?" Do you see what he's doing? He's using Diogenes' method, but internally. Instead of physically giving up everything like the cynic, Marcus was psychologically detaching from everything. And it worked. This man faced plagues, wars, betrayals, the death of multiple children, and never broke. Not once. because he had already let go of everything internally. But here's where Marcus goes even deeper than Diogenes. The homeless philosopher rejected society. The emperor transformed it. Marcus discovered that true power isn't just freedom from control. It's the ability to improve the world without being attached to the outcome. And that leads us to the most dangerous principle of all. Now I need to tell you about the most dangerous philosopher who ever lived. Not dangerous because he was violent. He never hurt anyone. Dangerous because he had a weapon so powerful, so devastating, that the entire city of Athens voted to kill him rather than let him continue using it. His name was Socrates, and his weapon was a simple question: what do you really know? That's it. But this question was so sharp, so precise, that it could cut through any argument, destroy any ego, expose any lie, including the lies you tell yourself. Socrates would approach the most respected, most powerful people in Athens, politicians, generals, priests, artists, and start asking questions, not to attack them, not to humiliate them, just to understand what they actually knew. And what he discovered was terrifying. Nobody knew anything. The politician couldn't explain what justice actually was. The general couldn't define courage. The priest couldn't describe the nature of goodness. The artist couldn't explain what made something beautiful. These people had built entire careers, entire identities on knowledge they didn't actually possess. But here's the most disturbing part. When Socrates pointed this out, gently, respectfully, logically, they didn't thank him. They hated him. Because he had revealed something that threatened their entire world. Most of what we think we know is just opinion, assumption, and social conditioning. And that made him the most dangerous man in Athens. But Socrates had discovered something even more powerful than Diogenes' freedom or Marcus' detachment. He had found intellectual immunity, the ability to think clearly without being clouded by ego, assumption, or social pressure. Here's how he did it: the admission of ignorance. While everyone else was pretending to know things they didn't understand, Socrates was saying, "I know that I know nothing." And this admission, this intellectual humility, gave him a massive advantage. Because when you admit you don't know something, you can actually learn it. When you pretend you already know, you remain ignorant forever. But the story takes a dark turn, and this dark turn reveals the most important lesson of all. The year is 399 BCE. Socrates stands before a jury of 501 Athenian citizens. The charges: corrupting the youth and impiety toward the gods. The penalty: death. Now here's what you need to understand. Socrates could have saved himself easily. All he had to do was apologize, promise to stop asking uncomfortable questions, maybe leave Athens permanently. Simple. Instead, he does something that sounds completely insane. He doubles down. He tells the jury that not only will he never stop philosophizing, but that they need him to keep doing it. He compares himself to a gadfly, an annoying insect that stings a lazy horse to keep it moving. Athens, he says, is like a large horse that moves slowly because of its size. It needs to be stirred up. And I am the gadfly that the god has given to the city. The jury votes: 280 guilty, 221 not guilty, death by hemlock poison. But here's where it gets interesting. Even after the verdict, Socrates has one last chance. His friends arrange everything for an escape: money, horses, safe passage to another city, freedom. Socrates refuses. Not because he wants to die, but because he has something more important than life itself: philosophical integrity. He explains it like this: I have spent my entire life arguing that we should never do wrong, even when wrong has been done to us. If I escape now, breaking the law, even an unjust law, I would be betraying everything I've taught. So he drinks the hemlock, but here's what nobody talks about: the way he dies. As the poison works its way through his body, paralyzing him from the feet up, Socrates spends his final hours teaching. He's not afraid. He's not angry. He's curious. Curious about what death might be like. Curious whether his soul is immortal. His last words: Credo, we owe a cock to Asclepius. Pay the debt and do not forget. Asclepius was the god of healing. People sacrificed roosters to him when they recovered from illness. Some scholars think Socrates was saying that death was a cure, a healing from the disease of life. But I think it means something deeper. I think he was teaching us the Hemlock Principle. The willingness to die for truth gives you the courage to live for it. And this brings us to the most practical lesson of all. Now you might be thinking, this is all fascinating ancient history, but what does it mean for me? I'm not living in ancient Athens. I don't have an empire to rule. I can't just live in a jar in the marketplace. But here's what you're missing. The same forces that controlled those ancient philosophers are controlling you right now. The demon of shame that trapped the Athenians. It's your social anxiety, your fear of being judged, your need for approval on social media. The attachments that enslaved everyone except Marcus Aurelius. They're your mortgage, your status symbols, your desperate need to maintain your image. The false knowledge that Socrates exposed. It's the echo chamber of your beliefs, the assumptions you never question, the facts you learned from biased sources. The choice between comfort and truth that Socrates faced. You face it every single day when you choose between speaking up or staying silent, between doing what's right or what's easy. You are fighting the same battles, you just don't realize it. So let me give you the modern application of everything we've learned. The Diogenes Method: pick one thing you're ashamed of, something harmless but embarrassing. Do it deliberately, in public. Feel the shame. Then do it again. You're not trying to become shameless. You're trying to become immune to shame's control over you. The Marcus Technique. Every morning, spend 5 minutes imagining losing everything you're attached to. Your job, your possessions, your reputation. Not to be negative, but to practice psychological detachment. You'll discover that most of what you think you need is just want disguised as necessity. The Socratic Weapon. Take your strongest belief, political, religious, personal, and ask yourself, what evidence would change my mind? If you can't answer that question, you don't have a belief. You have a bias, and biases make you controllable. The Hemlock Principle. Identify one area where you're compromising your integrity for comfort or safety. Then ask yourself, what would I do if I weren't afraid? That's probably what you should do. But here's the warning: this will make you dangerous. Not to others, to the systems that depend on your compliance, your fear, your need for approval. Let me tell you what happened to me when I started applying these principles. I stopped caring about likes, shares, and social media validation. Suddenly, my content got better because I was creating for truth, not applause. I stopped buying things to impress people who don't matter. My bank account grew, but more importantly, my self-respect returned. I started questioning beliefs I'd held for years. Some I kept, some I discarded, but all of them became chosen rather than inherited. I began speaking truth even when it was uncomfortable. I lost some friends, but the ones who remained became deeper, more authentic relationships. I became philosophically dangerous. But here's what I didn't expect. People started coming to me for advice. Not because I had all the answers, but because I had the courage to admit when I didn't. Not because I was successful by traditional standards, but because I was free. Diogenes didn't just reject society. He showed society its own contradictions. Marcus didn't just rule an empire. He demonstrated what leadership without ego looks like. Socrates didn't just ask questions. He proved that wisdom begins with admitting ignorance. They were all doing the same thing, living philosophically instead of just talking about it. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Not to become a homeless cynic or a stoic emperor or a martyred philosopher, but to become philosophically alive, someone who thinks for themselves, acts with integrity, and refuses to be controlled by fear. Because here's the final truth that all three of these men understood. The unexamined life is not just unworthy of living, it's not really living at all. You have a choice. You can continue being controlled by shame, attachment, false beliefs, and fear. You can keep living the life that society tells you to live, wanting what it tells you to want, fearing what it tells you to fear. Or you can do what Diogenes, Marcus Aurelius, and Socrates did. You can think for yourself. You can live for yourself. You can die for something that matters. You can become philosophically dangerous. The question is, are you ready to break reality, or will you keep living in the comfortable prison that everyone else calls normal? The choice, as it always has been, is yours. But choose quickly, because every day you wait, the chains get heavier. Every day you delay, the cage gets smaller. Every day you postpone thinking for yourself, you become more like everyone else. And everyone else is not free. Become the philosopher you were meant to be. If this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen before, if it made you question something you thought you knew, if it gave you the courage to think differently, then those ancient philosophers are still doing their work, 2,500 years later. That's the power of philosophy. It doesn't just change how you think, it changes who you become. Hit that subscribe button if you want more truth that cuts through the lies. Like this video if you're ready to live philosophically. And comment below with one belief you're willing to question, one fear you're willing to face, one attachment you're willing to release. Remember, the examined life is the only one worth living. Now go examine yours.